but I was actually buying it to then get a visa. So, no one's shooting at me. If you're not prepared to do the work before you buy the store to understand how your revenue is coming into the store and what your costs are going to be, then I wouldn't recommend that you buy any store.
Okay, welcome to today's episode. We have an exciting guest in store. We have Jason Worme, who came all the way from Australia to own a laundromat in New York City. So we're going to hear about his adventure of starting his first laundromat and what he has in store next. So Jason, welcome to the show.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, one of the reasons we're so excited to have you on the show is because I don't think it's a secret at this point that Jason attended our pickup and delivery workshop here in Cincinnati. And we knew him a little bit from afar, just through Facebook. And he came here and man, this guy's a rock star, guys. We always say we do this show for really two reasons. One, we believe that there's a lot of people in the laundromat industry that want to improve their business, but a lot of times aren't sure how to. And so we want to bring value and those golden nuggets I talk about and help people that are already in the industry improve their business. And then the other reason we do is we've learned that there's, quite frankly, a lot of people in the industry that have no interest in improving. And so we want to attract rock stars from outside the industry to the industry. And I'm not sure we did that with you, but that's our reason for doing that. And when people like Jason come from other industries where they are absolute superstars into our industry, and you get to know them really well, you notice that they're bringing something different into the industry. And I think that's the version, that's what we refer to as elevating the industry, elevating the people that are in the industry, and then attracting people to the industry that are going to help us continue to lift it up. And we believe that's what you are. So thank you for taking your time out of your day, man. I know you're not real busy. I mean, you don't really have any kids or anything like that keep you busy. It's not like you've moved to a new country recently. We'll get into all that. But anyway, thanks for joining us, man. Super excited to have you.
And it was so great to get to know you at the workshop. I know you kept us on our toes because you asked great questions. Like you were like, we show you something. Well, why is that? Do you have the data behind it? We're like, okay, let's see.
I think I told you this at the workshop, Jason, but I can confidently say we've never had an attendee challenge us. And I mean that in a good way.
Yes.
To the level that you did.
Challenge.
And it made us and makes us better. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Absolutely.
Wow, what an intro. I don't know what to say. I'm flattered. So thank you very much.
You absolutely deserve it. And I think if I understand correctly, you're going to be at the Wash, Dry, Fold workshop from the CLA in Nashville, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you feel like you get to know Jason a little bit through this episode, but the point is we're hoping for 200 or 300 people to show up at that workshop for the CLA. He's going to be there. You're going to want to introduce yourself and get to know this guy because he's already doing big things, but man, is he sharp. Man, is he sharp. So let's jump right into it. Enough flattering, man. Enough flattering. Anyway.
I'm blushing.
Well, you deserve it. You're absolute rock star. All right. So listen, what we want to do is start back at the beginning. And for those of you that don't know, you probably can't tell because he doesn't have an accent. But he's not from New York originally. He's from maybe another country. Tell us about how you and your family came to New York and the United States specifically, and a little bit about that journey. Because when you were telling us about it when you were here in Cincinnati, it was a pretty cool story.
Yeah, thanks. So I have a lovely wife, Jane, and 5 young children that range from 17 through to 6, 4 boys and then a little girl at the end. We'd always spoken since even before we had children that when we eventually had a family, we would like to spend some time living in another country with our kids to give them an experience to broaden their horizons. Anyone who's traveled will understand that it gives you a different perspective on, cultures, and then also the perspective of your own country, where you've come from. A couple of years ago, we started to put the wheels in motion, and we looked around at some different options of countries to live in. My wife had a desire to live in New York City, so here we are. Fast forward to today, we now live in New York City, and my wife and 5 children moved across a few months ago now. I came earlier, purchased the business up front, which allowed us to then get our visa. So here we are.
Wow.
Took a lot of work.
Yeah,
mountains of paperwork.
I cannot imagine. I know we talked a little bit about it at the workshop here, and I just can't even fathom everything you went through. How long was that? Was that like a 2-3 year process once you decided New York, or
it was probably
actually getting them over and everything?
Yeah, once we decided, it was probably about 18 months. So once we decided we were going to move to New York, we then engaged in an immigration lawyer who sort of helped us with the roadmap of the paperwork.
Wow.
Once you've purchased a business in the United States, doesn't that like help expedite the visa process? I would think if you own your own company.
Yeah, so there's a variety of visas available, and Australia, because of the relationship we have with the US, has more options than most countries. We decided to go down the path of E2 visa, which is an investor visa, and so purchasing a business was actually like the keystone, I guess, to us getting our visa approved. I probably got a bit of a unique journey in terms of buying our first laundromat. Most people are buying their first laundromat just to have their first laundromat, but I was actually buying it to then get a visa and allow our family to move here. And then, I wasn't familiar with the industry, so I had to learn the industry as well. We had all these other personal things that were going on in the background, and there actually isn't any surety that you will get a visa. So you actually buy the business with the risk that the visa might not actually be approved.
Oh, wow.
So so it's not a guarantee. Yeah, it was, and buying a laundromat in New York, it's not a cheap thing to do. So it was there's a bit of risk involved, but I've had an interesting, I guess, career, and managing risk is something that I've had to do throughout my whole career, and we were comfortable with the risk and prepared to move forward. And to be perfectly honest with you, it's the best thing we've ever done. It's been an amazing journey. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey already.
There's nothing better than free. Ever heard that before? Well, it's not true. You know what your laundromat customers like even better than free? It's fast. That's right. They want to save time more than they want to save money in most cases. They want to get in and out of your laundromat as fast as possible, and they'll pay more for that experience. We're proof of that here in Cincinnati. That's why we added HM Company drain troughs into our newest store in Cincinnati. While they may never know why, your customers will love that your washers all drain better and faster than with old school drain pipes. As if that wasn't enough, every HM drain trough is made in the USA, so they ship in only a few weeks, and everyone is custom made just for you and your project. If you want to provide your customers with a top of the industry experience in your store, then contact your distributor to order your HM Company drain trough today, or visit draintroughs.com.
So you mentioned that you, as far as managing risk, you had some experience already in that. Can you tell us about your background before coming to this, and before deciding laundromats, and why you decided laundromats? I have so many questions.
So I always talk to my children at the moment, but before my kids were sort of at this age, anyone that would ask, I'm still trying to work out what it is I want to do with my life. I guess a few different careers since I left school. At 18, I left school and home and joined the Australian Army. Went through we have a college called the Australian Defence Force Academy. It's quite similar to your West Point. And I graduated with a degree and as an officer in the Australian Army. I then had a career of about 12 years, culminating in Special Forces selection. I passed selection, and then I did the subsequent training to become a Special Forces officer. But I ultimately decided before the end of that I wanted to have a change. So just prior to that, I'd been on deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. So I have some context around risk in that regard, but also, when we have problems in the laundromat, I often joke with family and friends that, no one's shooting at me. If the washer's blocked or the sewers, the drain's blocked, it's in the context.
It'll be okay.
Everyone's going to be okay. Everyone's going to go home tonight and see their family. And when I left the Army, I had a couple of small jobs, but then I ultimately ended up buying a school bus company. So in Australia, we have contracts that operate the school buses, but those contracts are with the state government. We operated that for 10 years. I got the business to a point where I wasn't really involved in the day-to-day of the business. So I had some mechanic work for us and drivers and things like that. And I wasn't really involved in any of the day-to-day. So a couple of years before we sold it, I was not sure, I was getting a little bit bored. I reached out to some contacts some people that I've been in the Army with, and a friend had a vacancy that was in a town about 30 minutes away from where I lived. I started there in 2016, and I was like the guy who was, I sat next to the photocopier on day one and didn't really have any sort of responsibility. And then you sort of fast forward about 5 years, I ended up being the general manager of the entire site. I had about 400 people report to me. I had a team of engineers and a manufacturing plant. So we used to manufacture armoured vehicles for the Australian Army on the site. We had sort of two main product lines. The company was called Telus Australia. And then I moved into the role where I was ultimately responsible for all manufacturing operations. And so the weight of the risk, I guess, that's associated with that, and very, very complex job. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about, that $1 million overrun on this part of this project that we're working on. How do we recover that and draw? So I'd be waking up at 3:00 in the morning, and so it was around that time that we refreshed some of these ideas and said, "Hey, let's go and make a change." And we fast forward to today. So I left that job, and then in August of 2022, I think it was, I left that job, and then took a trip across to New York and tried to find a laundromat to buy. And in February of 2023, so earlier this year, we set on our first laundromat.
Would you like to make more money from your laundromat? Would you like those machines you're paying for to have more turns per day? Do you offer wash, dry, fold services or pickup and delivery laundry services? If not, would you like to? Whether you do or not, we have an amazing opportunity for you in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah, you've probably heard about it, guys, but it's our wash, dry, fold, pickup and delivery workshop. And to answer your first question, yes, it is for drop-off laundry, wash, dry, fold, and pickup and delivery. So if you're doing any of those things, this workshop is going to help you tremendously. But the truth is, we were pretty so-so laundromat owners and so-so successful until we launched drop-off laundry and pickup and delivery. And being able to what I call optimize your laundromat to generate more profit and more revenue out of the existing facility, that's the key to taking your life from good to great, financially speaking, with laundromats. And that's what made us Laundromat Millionaires.
You don't have to just listen to us. Listen to what some of our past attendees have to say about our Wash, Dry, Fold, Pickup and Delivery Workshop in Cincinnati, Ohio.
It was the best workshop I've attended in over 25 years. And what you guys have put together is nothing short of phenomenal. I think that you guys have put together both strategic and tactical systems that will make an individual who wants to own the laundromat profitable within months, not years.
Was a workshop worth the investment? Without a doubt, it was definitely worth the investment. So not only did we have two very packed days with Dave and Carla and their team, both in the classroom and touring the facilities, but we also came away with this extensive 100-page handbook. And then after the workshop was completed, I received a bunch of electronic performers and templates that we've been able to use since the workshop. Every day since the workshop, I found myself referring back to either those electronic tools or the handbook that we received. So,
was it worth the investment? Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I cannot say that enough. This was such a blessing, and I am so very grateful that Dave and Carla put this together and are sharing their knowledge and experience with others to have this to grow their business and to become more successful. Thank you, guys.
So are you interested? Go to laundromatmillionaire.com to learn more and see where you can register. So why laundromats? Like, obviously your experience could lead you into any industry. I mean, you got experience with management, staffing, all that kind of stuff. Why laundromats?
So we actually initially had the opportunity to come to Wharton Business School, which is in Pennsylvania, through the company that I was working for. So the initial plan to move to New York was to go and do that. We would live in New York. I'd commute down. I had an executive MBA program that you would have to attend for a weekend, every second weekend. I just said to my wife, I said, look, I just want to get back to owning my own business. And I'm kind of a hands-on kind of guy. So I've been in the army. I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of looked around for businesses that were a little bit like that. So there was this, gritty side to it. So I wasn't looking for a white collar, own a dentist facility or anything like that. I wanted to have something where if you needed to, you can get your hands dirty.
Something with machinery. You needed machinery.
Well, something where you can add your own value through, your own effort, I guess, is kind of what I was looking at. So we initially looked at car washes. I ultimately ended up looking at a bunch of forums, mainly through Facebook. So I joined a bunch of these communities to see what information I could gather about the industry. And this funny little thing kept popping up all the time where people would be saying that, I wish I had known about the laundromat industry before I bought car washes, or they were saying, I'm selling all my car washes and moving into the laundromat industry.
Really?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, there was plenty of people who were keeping their laundromats, but there was this common thread throughout a lot of the conversations that kept coming up about laundromats. So I then joined a whole bunch of Facebook forums for laundromats and realized, the light bulb went on. This is a different industry. It's not like we understand a laundromat is in Australia. I friended a guy called Luke Williford on Instagram.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him.
I'm sure you don't know. Yeah. A couple of early deals early on, we would get on a call together. He'd help me understand how to read the P&L that we were looking at and what to look out for. Ultimately, none of those early deals were ones that we settled on, but shout out to Luke if he ever hears this. Thanks for his help. We still keep in touch, so we're really excited about the opportunities. And I don't know if I'm okay to share or not, but we're actually in the process of looking at our second laundromat here in New York. So we're really excited about it, and we're glad we made the decision to move forward with laundromats.
You're going to rock it for sure. But let's back up. We want to hear about the laundromat you bought and why you bought it. What was the discovery like? And I mean, I'm obviously you're coming at this with Luke's help, but you're also coming at it with a fresh set of eyes. But I'm hoping we can, I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but I'm hoping we can pull a little bit of your knowledge of, I don't know if manufacturing is the right term, but you didn't come into this industry without understanding business, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you looked at it through a little bit different lens.
I think I probably still do to this day. So I hear a lot of people talk about turns per day and other industry specific terms, but I just tackled it from I call it a profit and loss. It's actually not even probably the right term, but if you can understand your revenue and understand your expenses, then at the end of that, you've got, earnings before taxes. So what's left before you get taxed and before you pay yourself and before you pay any sort of debt. So I see a lot of people on forums now that struggle with understanding sort of how to value a business, how to value a laundromat, understand sort of how to ensure that their revenue and expenses are what they are. So we just every time I look at a laundromat, I just start with, okay, owner that is prepared to sell this business. You tell me what your starting point is, what you think your figures are, and then I'll go away and ask you for information after that to the point where I get comfortable that number is probably close to what you said it was, or it's something else. And quite often it can be something else, and I'll be comfortable with that, provided at the bottom you still got a return that you're happy with. So I haven't ever looked at a laundromat to say, okay, it does this many turns and I think I can get it to this if I do, something else. I've always looked at it, okay, what is it doing today? Am I prepared to buy that business today? And if it never improves from there, am I going to be okay with that? Now, the business we bought, it has improved. It's improved dramatically since we bought it, which has been fantastic. But, no one can guarantee what the future might look like. And so I think, I come from a bit, I used to run a $1.5 billion program as a program director. So I'm pretty comfortable with spreadsheets, really comfortable understanding cost structures, how payroll, might work. How would you calculate your hourly rate? What return are you getting for that hourly rate? Anyone who's listening to this that's new to the industry, there is plenty of secret sauce to the industry and heaps of things that I still need to learn. But the fundamentals for any business, are always the same. What's your revenue? How are you going to generate revenue in your business? And then what are the costs that you're going to have to be able to generate that revenue? If you can understand that before you fully understand that before you settle on a business, and there won't be any surprises. The store that I am buying, there's the way that the current business is run, and then there's the way that I intend to run it are going to be definitely two different things. And so in that, so I've built my own P&L in Excel. I started with his initial inputs, and then as I've gone through the exploration process, okay, well, there'll be things like his labour cost is going to be different to mine because the owner currently drives to do pickup and delivery. I don't intend to do that. So I'm going to employ a driver. So I just need to understand what that cost will be and add it into my future P&L. And then at the bottom, when I get to, okay, what does this business actually return to me after it's all said and done? I've got the actual number that I expect to generate.
So you basically start with their revenue, like assuming that your research says, okay, yeah, that's the true revenue of this store. You start with the revenue they give you, but then instead of subtracting out their costs, you subtract out, okay, if I had the store and was getting this revenue, so because you said you assume that you're not going to grow and hope that you do. Then you subtract out, well, if I was running this store at that same level of revenue, these would be my costs, and then figure out, is there profit left over?
Yeah, so now I have the luxury of having one store where I can, because I've got a little bit of experience already where I can transfer that across. But on the first store, I actually started with their expenses. And then what I did was ask them to give me the background evidence to understand how did you come to putting that expense into this P&L. So the easy ones are you start with your utilities bills. Give me like 6 to 12 months of utilities bills. Okay, does that average out to this number? Yes, it does. Okay, that's a tick. So utilities are easy. You just got, the local council has given you a report. Payroll can be a little bit harder, depending on sort of what records they keep. But if you've got a store that's open for X amount of hours, if the store's open 12 hours, and if they only have one person in the store every time you go, well, they've probably only got one person on any shift. So you've got 12 hours of labour per day. What's the minimum that you can be paid? If it's $10 in your state, then it's $120 a day of labour cost is somewhere near what it's going to be. And then you extrapolate that out. If you open every day of the year, 365 times that's your starting point for your labour. What did he tell you? Was it that number? Okay, if it's that number, then it's a tick. If it's higher than that, well, why is it higher? If it's lower, which it usually is, then you need to go and find out why. And so I just do that for every expense. And it's the big ones. It's your labour that can be, could be a couple of $100,000 a year here in New York if you've got a couple of staff on at any one time. And so they're the ones that if they're saying 100 and they've got it wrong and it's actually 200, that can send you broke. So they're the ones that you want to really focus on. And look, if you do the whole P&L, that's great. And now, as I said, I've got enough experience to say, okay, I know my phone bill is going to be this. I know my garbage collection is going to be this. So those ones I don't really worry about. It's the big hitters, the rent, your utilities, your payroll. If you can verify those or understand how you're going to run it and use that as your actual cost, then you're okay.
I want to make sure I understand correctly. So you're not paying based on your expenses and your revenue projections. You're paying based on the current ones, but you're making a buying decision. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're making a buying decision based on the what the business would be if you ran it the way you would run it. Did I understand that right?
Well, so this is when you get into the industry nuance of like, how do we value a laundromat? And this is something that is. It still shocks me today, to be honest with you, because there's this notion of there's somewhere between 2 and 6X,
2 and 5X
maybe,
or whatever.
Yeah, whatever that. Yeah, and then we see people try and put some science around that. The 2 would mean that they're older machines and a shorter rent and a shorter lease, and 5 or 6 might be got a super long, fantastic lease and new machines.
And then location.
Location. And, there's so many variables that this 2 to 6 thing is. I think it's good in terms of it's a guide. And in fact, what I think it helps is if you're a buyer, it's probably how the seller has actually valued their business because it's so embedded in the industry. So to go back to your question, Dave, you get the advertised P&L and then you can do a quick calculation between the profit and the selling price, and they go, oh, okay, this guy's asking 5 times revenue. And so that's a pretty handy starting point because it probably means that the machine's in Europe, it's in a good location. Here in New York, what it generally means is you have pretty high revenues. So in New York, there's a wide variety of stores for sale. I've pretty much passed on anything that is kind of a low revenue store because I want it to be able to generate enough money for me and my family to live on. And you're never going to do that on a low revenue store.
Yep.
And so the store, we were talking about the store that I ultimately bought, it was a high revenue store. It has high costs, but ultimately then it has, a high profit margin at the end. And so he was asking a multiple of profit. I went away and rebuilt the profit and loss sheet as I understood that it would be, and they were close but not the same. So he actually kept some really good numbers. Probably one of the best I've ever seen. I probably
That's pretty
looked
rare.
at it's really rare. I've probably looked at in detail at say 30 or 40 sort of stores, pulled apart P&Ls, and that's probably the best one I've ever seen. And it kind of made it easy. And I guess for our first store, it gave me a lot of confidence too to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But I went through the process that I described. I rebuilt it. There was a few things that I weren't comfortable with. And then I got to, okay, this is what this store is going to generate for me. I then used the multiple thing to get back to, okay, well, this would end up being, and I can't remember the numbers now, but maybe it ended up being 6 or 7. And so I actually then took my workings to the owner and said, hey, this is where I think you've made some mistakes, or where these are what the actual costs are going to be for me. And therefore I'd be more comfortable at an asking price lower than what you'd originally asked for using the same multiple. So I just took my new profit, applied his multiple, got to an asking price. And the same day we agreed on the price. So
awesome.
I know a lot of people they'll extrapolate those numbers out into what it could be, or they believe they can turn it into, and they'll pay that multiple, which is crazy, right? Or even owners will say, I mean, how many times you've looked at a lot of listings, I'm guessing, you'll say, well, you could do $200,000 a year and pick up a delivery. And they somehow want to extrapolate that out as if you're doing it or something. And I'm like, wait, but I have to build that. That's not, that's just ignorance on their part. But it's amazing. All it takes is either an ignorant owner or an owner that, maybe doesn't know quite what they think they do. And then one sucker, one person that thinks that's actually how a business is valued. I know obviously you're not the case there. I just wanted to point out to people there's two different sides of the equation, and I personally am always looking for the upside. I'm just not looking to pay for the upside. I just won't buy a location if it doesn't have upside. Does that make sense?
It's definitely more
100%.
It's definitely more conservative the way Jason's thinking, where he uses their numbers, his costs, and says, this is what I would make assuming it didn't grow. Obviously, you're going to improve it and you're going to get growth. But I do want to throw out a caution to people too listening is don't rely too heavily on those numbers alone. Their starting revenue, and I know you didn't because I know how you are, Jason, is still make sure you're analyzing the current demographics, the competition in the area, because even if they're making, they're making 100,000 in revenue this past year, but there's a new store that's a block away that just opened up. And, you got to make sure nothing has changed in the market where that number that they're reporting for the past year is even going to stay there. Because it's possible that even if you bought it today, that starting revenue is no longer the starting revenue. So just throwing that out there too. But I love how you're being less of a risk taker by saying, I'll start assuming I don't even make it, grow any. So I think that's a good way to avoid the extra risk.
Buy it on, be conservative would be my advice.
Yeah. So you're a data guy. So you extrapolate out all this data, you reverse engineer it, you run it through your spreadsheets, which is all amazing. How do you verify that the data you're using is correct? Because you had to, there's no way you took their word for it. I just know you a little bit. There's no way that happened. And that's something a lot of people struggle with, right? In the industry, they say, okay, how do I know if this information is accurate? If you evaluated 30 or 40 stores, you probably struggled at the beginning and found a little bit of an art. I always say there's a balance between it being an art and a science. How did you go through that process?
Yeah, so I guess I'm probably still learning, because there is some nuances around the industry, but I just do everything on a spreadsheet. And so I guess the piece that Carla mentioned just before there, and like what's happening in the local area, all of that stuff, I try and do that on my first visit. So I go to the store on the first visit. Is there a store across the road? I usually open up Google Maps. Where is the nearest store? And in New York, they can be like a mile away, and that's not a big deal. So it's where, depending on what industry you're in, you need to understand that part of it. So try and get all of that, I guess, more the art side of it out of the way early on the first visit, or if I go back for a second visit, I'll sometimes go back and do a load of washing there. Check that things are kind of working in the store, that it's not completely run down. Even if it is, try and get a feel for what it might count the machines. Okay, get a rough estimate of what it would cost to retool and things like that. Try and get all that done early on. And then I get into what I guess I would call the science side of it, which for me is the piece that really actually gets you to the point where you can start to make some decisions. So I just build a giant spreadsheet, and it's usually multiple worksheets. So what I'll do is I'll start with the seller's P&L. So certainly here in New York, every time you go to buy a laundromat, the broker will provide you, after you sign an NDA, with a profit and loss statement. And then what I generally will try to do is then build an extra worksheet for each of the line items that you've got in that P&L. So you'll break your revenue down into your different streams. So they might do wash and fold. They'll always be self-serve, or usually always be self-serve. They might have some vending. They might have over-counter soap sales that don't fit in the vending machine. Might have an ATM, some other sort of minor stuff. They might have pick up and delivery as a separate line item in their P&L. And so what I'll do is I'll just list off 5 things. I'll build an extra worksheet for each of those 5 things as a placeholder. And I'll do the exact same thing for your expenses. And then I'll go and ask the owner to provide me with evidence to how they got to the advertised number on the P&L. So most of the time you'll find that the P&L is either an average or the best case or a guess. There's usually 3 things happening.
If it's nice round numbers, it's a guess.
Yeah, I love getting those because you can have a bit of fun with the broker. And oh, really? They all of these numbers ended in 00.
That's crazy. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you get the answer? I don't know how we got to that number.
Yeah. So the broker will pretty quickly get to the point where the broker just says, "Look, I don't know." Yeah. And then you open up conversations kind of either directly with the owner or through the broker. And sometimes in New York, you've got to show that you've got the financial means to be able to, put the effort in. So they want to know that are you a genuine buyer? So you then start to ask for the evidence. And so if they've got say a LaundryWorks system that their self-serve customers are using, that makes life really easy. You can just generate the reports that can go back as long as they've had that system. And then I'll take those reports and I actually punch it into the spreadsheet. What I usually do is break it down by month. So if they're giving me LaundryWorks for the last 12 months, I'll put in January through to December, each of the monthly totals. Or if they give me more detail, I'll put that in as well. And then later on, you can sort of line up the trends. So New York sort of drops off in summer. People wearing less clothes, people go away for vacations and things like that. And so what you would hope to see in your expenses is that your expenses are also dipping off at about the same time. Depending, your electricity might go up because you got the HVAC on, but your water should drop down because you got less volume coming through your stores. And so I try and get it in as much detail as the owner will allow me to do. I guess the reason why I do it is because usually what happens as part of this process is that something jumps out as being odd, and it's often not in the revenue. The revenue, if they've got card systems, then the revenue is usually pretty easy. It just usually is what it is. But then if you've got expenses that you can also break down into the same detail, this is where it starts to get interesting. So the first one I do is just ask the utilities. They normally have that on hand and they give that to you straight away. You punch that in and you can look at it month on month against your revenue. And sometimes things will jump out as being odd there. You can go back and ask questions around, okay, well, what was going on here? More often than not, the owner probably doesn't know, probably didn't even know that there was anything odd. And so you might then have to go back through and go into the detail of the actual bill to understand, okay, well, there was a problem with their water bill. And the store that I actually bought in Staten Island had some issues with the water bill. And there'd been some incorrect payments and stuff like that. So there's some detail there that we're able to work through. And then it took a lot of work, but at the end of it, I was comfortable that I understood what was going on. The payroll for me is one of the ones that allows you to understand how, and each time you get this information, it's another indication of how the current owner is operating their business. And it's usually either an indicator of other things that are going on. So sometimes you might identify the fact that the people are not being paid correctly and probably below the minimum wage in some stores I've been to. which is terrible. Payroll, there's some questions you can ask early on of the owner. Or when you do that first visit, they'll usually say on the door what their opening hours are. So you write that down. Okay, the store's open for 12 hours. That's if they've got one person on staff or in the store, you write that down. If there's two, you write that down. They might not necessarily always have that on every day of the week, but it's early information that allows you to start running some of these calculations. And I kind of have the spreadsheet set up now where you just input the variables, and then it'll help you populate the likely gross payroll number for the year. And then if you take that and compare it to what has been reported, there's usually a difference, and then you can start to understand why. So, just do that for every single expense in as much detail as I can possibly get. And then, your water and utilities, if you've had a good enough look at it, a year or 2 years worth of water and utilities averaged out, or the actual, months listed, you can probably expect that they're going to be somewhere near that. And occasionally I'll sort of factor in it's probably going to go up by 3 to 5% in the next, forward-looking 12 months. And so you might add that in as an additional cost, but it's not going to double as an example. And so I'm going to use that number that is my likely to be real cost in the POL that I ultimately settle on prior to going and making the offer.
Mm-hmm. Man, you're going to have people reaching out to you for a template of your worksheet.
Be like, how much for the spreadsheets?
I know.
So I got a question for you. Pretty sure I know the answer to. So if you looked at, I think you said maybe 30 stores or something like that, and I know you're looking at a big market, New York City, which is more sophisticated as far as the way businesses are run, because they have to be, because of the competition and the volume and all that. It sounds like you were mostly looking at locations you found through brokers, which tend to have better books. Doesn't mean they're honest, but better books, or at least fictitious books. Yeah, so that's where I'm actually going with this. Did you look at any deals that just the books were a hot mess? How did you react to that? Being a data guy, did you just walk away, or would you have if you didn't have to? Because that's a question we get a lot, right? Is, hey, these people say it makes this, and the NOI is this, and they can't prove it, and I don't know if it's true. How do I value this? And that's a whole nother episode, but I'm just curious if you encountered any of that, and you might not have because you're in New York. If you had been in a lot of other markets in the country, I promise you would have. But anything, did you experience any of that?
Yeah, so the expenses side of it, right? There has to be some sort of paper trail in terms of their expenses.
Yeah,
unless they're paying for everything with cash, which does happen in some stores. Mm-hmm. But there will be some paper trail of expenses somewhere. What can sometimes be harder is the revenue. So if it's a coin store, initially, if it's a coin store that's doing a lot of revenue, then I'd probably go through the same process, but then get to a point before we make an offer of, okay, I need to come in and, there'll be a notebook that sits on the bench that they write down the weight of their quarters, or there'll be and so, I'd just sit in the store and take photos of 100 pages of their notebook, and I'd go back and put that into my spreadsheet and go and try and work out, because most people want to understand that they have some sort of system. It's very rare that you'll go into the store and they're literally just taking the cash out and walking out the door, putting it in their pocket and not recording something somewhere. Although I think I have been in a couple of those stores.
I promise you they're out there.
Yeah, they're definitely out there. But it's the same process. So if you get to a point where you've understood everything else and then you need to verify your coin, sit in the store, see if you can get access to their security cameras. Do a couple of visits with the owner while he does his coin drop, and be there and verify the same. But I did get to just recently I looked at a store in the Bronx, and they had a card system, but the owner told me he didn't know how to use it, and so there was a report. It was like 2 months, I think. There was a report that had been given to the broker for about 2 months. In the end, I just walked away. So the owner wasn't prepared to sort of go out his way to help me get the information that I wanted as the buyer. And when I sort of get to that point, it's like, okay, well, you either want to sell it or you don't. If you're not prepared to make a little bit of effort now, what's going to be like when we get to closing time? And we've really got to put some effort in around how we change over systems, and it's just it was too big of a red flag, so I just walked away from it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, the reason I wanted to bring that up is because I thought I would get to a point where ultimately you're just very patient. You're very methodical, and I mean that in a very good way. And you're going to get the numbers. You don't care if it takes 6 months, right? And that's what I tell a lot of people that come to me for coaching and stuff. I say, look, maybe it's not as simple as pulling a report in LaundryWorks, but the information's there. And if the information is that important to you, which it should be, by the way, if it's that important to you, you will sit there with a counter and click, 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 click. If you have to, every somebody puts a coin in a machine. Now, some people aren't willing. Most people probably aren't willing to do that. Okay, well, now you have to verify that, or you have to balance that with, okay, well, how important is this data? Maybe you're making,
or maybe that's not the right store for you.
Yes,
if they can't get you the data.
I just want to give another example. You paid a lot of money for your store, but I mean, we had a store we bought for $30,000, and I was just like, you know what, the location's worth $30,000. Who cares? And I didn't look at anything. I mean, I was just like, I'll give you $30,000. Just give me the keys. Like, just leave, right?
Yours wasn't $30,000.
I don't think it was.
Nothing is in New York.
But those are the two extremes. And the only reason I want to bring this up.
What I'd say, Dave, to those people is if you're not prepared to do the work before you buy the store to understand how your revenue is coming into the store and what your costs are going to be, then you probably shouldn't. I wouldn't recommend that you buy any store because
100%.
If you fast forward the first month or 2 months into ownership, you'll have to understand where your revenue comes in and how the coins are going into the machine, how you then ultimately count them and weigh them and take them to the bank, and all of those things they have a cost to them. It's either your time or someone else's time that you would have to pay for. And those expenses they're all costs. So if you aren't prepared to do the work up front to get that information, then you probably aren't, I wouldn't recommend you buy any store. And if you're finding it difficult for the owner to give it to you, then, you just need to be patient and continue to work with the owner. They will have something. And if the first way of getting it that isn't fruitful, like if you don't get an answer, think about how you might be able to get it in another way. So, you said you could sit in the store and click a counter. Each time someone comes in, you could average out what you think they might spend. You could look at what machine they use, run a spreadsheet, build a spreadsheet. You do that on a Saturday and a Sunday and a Wednesday and a Thursday and take the two data sets and then, create a profile. And there's plenty of ways where you can get, and for me, it's all about just getting comfortable that this is the store that you want to buy, because ultimately, once you hand over the check, whether it's 30,000 or a bunch more, you then own it and it's all yours to deal with. And so the more work you've done up front, the more comfortable you are once you take over, and the more you know about how the store operates and what the expenses are and what it is that you're going to have to pay for. And I think probably a lot of people would, particularly if you haven't owned a business before, it's like you go and pull the money out of the machine. Wow, there's a giant stack of money here. And, when you actually work out that of that stack, there's about this, the top, half an inch at the top of notes are the ones that actually end up in your pocket. Mm-hmm. The rest you need to put away, and they're going to go to the utilities company, the garbage company, the phone company, payroll. Mm-hmm. So you need to be, the more work you can do of that up front, then you're at the point where when you go and collect that. Once I go and when I do collects, money goes into the bank, and then I have a little percentage that, 65% goes into operating costs, X percent goes into tax, X percent goes into my pocket, and then X percent for profit.
You've read Profit First.
You've read it. Yes.
By the way, if you haven't read that book, it's a fantastic book.
You should
absolutely read it. Just called Profit First. Great book, by the way. So go check that out, guys.
Fantastic book. Yeah. Definitely recommend that one.
Tell us about the store itself. Like, let's get away from the data for a minute.
What size, what type of machines,
I know you said the store is
services.
4,500 square foot. You said you bought the building. Like, give us a little visual, and we'll try to drop a few images into the B-roll if you're watching on YouTube and things like that. But tell us about the equipment, the condition, and you don't have to get super nerdy. Just tell us about, we're all laundromat people. We want to hear about all the little nuts and bolts.
Yeah, so 4,500 square feet. We bought the building. So there's 9 car parks at the front, which is a bit of a luxury in New York. So we, as it's on our block, we have 9 of our own car parks.
And are they on your property?
They're on my property. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I wish it was 90, but you just gotta take
9
what
is
you can
good
get
in
here.
New York.
Yeah, 9 is good. Yeah.
Any is good in New York.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. Inside the store, we have 58 Dexter washers that range from 20 pounders up to 80 pounders, and we have 54 washers and 58 dryers, 58 double stack dryers. We have a bonus section to the building. So there was previously a cell phone repair shop. There was another tenant, so there was like a second unit. And that has 2 parts to it. So one part we use as a storeroom. We keep detergents and things to operate the business in there. And then the other part is where the cell phone store was. And I've got some plans that if we so we're just the store didn't do pickup and delivery when we purchased it. We've just started on that journey. It's been a bit of hard work where we're slowly making some traction. But what I hope is that we run out of storage. So inside the store we have a small office. It has our point of sale. We have some over-the-counter detergents, and we have storage for drop-off wash and fold. We do about 3,500 pounds a week of drop-off wash and fold. So we have a storeroom for that. And what I'm hoping is if our pickup and delivery business can grow, we can, move into the bonus room with some extra storage and maybe even some extra room for folding if we need it. But kind of an L shape, long store that sort of kicks around into an L shape at the end. We have a couple of vending machines, an ATM, a couple of little kids games, a candy ball machine and things like that. But it's fairly new. Wouldn't say it's fairly new. It's probably the machines are probably about 6 years old. I think the building was built about 20 years ago. I'm guessing at about 10 years ago, it's had a fairly significant makeover. It's really a pretty neat store in pretty good nick. So it was turnkey. We were able to just come in on day one. We gave it a bit of a deep clean, changed a few of the signs and things like that. And we actually rebranded the store. We're Star Laundromats is the name of our business. So we put up some new signs. Got a few things that we still need to do. So we're wanting to repaint the exterior of the building. It's just getting a bit old and ratty, so we're just trying to find some contractors that can help us with that at the moment. But yeah, that's kind of it. It's and it's in sort of the northwest part of Staten Island, and off that commercial strip is just deep residential all around us. So we're in a really good location. There are stores like just down the road. We've probably got I think we've probably got 5 stores within a mile, and there's one that's kind of going to be probably about 300 feet from us, a new store that's opening up it's probably they're doing like a whole construction thing. So in 2024, I think mid 2024, the plan is for that to open up. So my plan there is to expand my business from beyond one store to I've got no doubt that there'll be an impact when that opens up. It's pretty natural that people want to go and see what the new thing looks like. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping to grow the pickup and delivery piece, as I said earlier, and then become multi-store to help sort of flatten out the dip. If we have one store, that'll be potentially significant sort of impact to our business. But if we have multiple stores by the time that happens, then it'll be an impact, but it'll be hopefully less because the average across the stores will help.
Mm-hmm.
Are you open 24 hours and are you fully attended?
Yeah, so we weren't when we purchased the store. We were open when I purchased it from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Mm-hmm. We'd ran it and we're fully attended. We had 6 staff and we ran it for the first few months, I think in June. So we purchased it in February, we ran until June as it was. And then in June, I made the decision to go to 24 hours fully attended. So
even overnight, overnight, you're fully attended.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we are. So the competitor that's opening up on the corner, they will be 24 hours. So that was one of the drivers. I thought, well, we'll try and do the same. But at the same time, we were sort of getting up to around sort of 4,000 pounds a week of wash and fold that was needing to be processed. Mm-hmm. And so we had we're getting pretty tight for labour. It was getting to the point where we were constantly had a backlog. And if we had like a big day, like a spike, then, it would take us a few days to get over it. So part of the reason why we went to 24 hours was to then free up, we had an extra shift then of processing. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we, about 2 weeks apart, we also increased our price on drop-off wash and fold. We have 2 price points. So we have a regular and a premium price point. We increased both by about the same amount. My thinking there was that we would see a dip in pounds, and hopefully, our revenue would sort of stay about the same, but that didn't happen. So our revenue shot up and our pounds have kept going up. So that's a good problem to have. But we now have 24 hours and we've got the extra labor, so we're able to cope with it.
What's the difference between regular and premium wash, dry, fold?
A little bit of marketing and some detergent and some of the things that we use around dryer sheets and softeners and things like that. They have more options with the premium product than they do with the regular. So regular is just our standard detergent and just gets chucked in a dryer with no dryer sheet. The premium product, we just take a little bit extra care. If they want hangers, they've got that option and things like that. Okay. So, yeah.
Is there any difference in the turnaround time?
No, we don't have a difference. Some people in our market do, and they usually charge a significant premium for either same day or next day turnaround.
So did you already have, you must have went in one direction or the other. I'm guessing when you bought the store, there was one drop-off service. Did you take a service that was average and build a premium, or did you have a premium and build a poor man's version?
No, it actually had both.
Oh, so it did?
When we settled on it. So I inherited that, and I won't take any credit for it because I don't think I would have come up with the concept myself.
Yeah, but it makes sense. And so you're a numbers guy. It makes sense to do that.
Yeah, 100% it makes sense. Yeah, I really like it. So the store that I'm hopefully going to buy soon, it only has one offering, and day one we're going to offer the premium service, and in a bit of a different socio-economic area too. So as in a little bit sort of a wealthier area, the second store. So I'm fairly hopeful that'll be well received and hopefully take off. So.
Yeah, I'm kicking around, and by kicking around, I mean in my head and in my leadership meetings, I'm kicking around this wash and go idea. Have you heard about this? Where you don't fold their laundry.
Okay.
You just wash it, dry it. You check it in. You take ownership. You wash it, dry it, and bag it, meaning you don't fold it. You just take it out of the dryer, cram it in a bag, and give it back to them. They call it, a lot of people in the industry, obviously not publicly.
I call it a wrinkly mess.
Well, but it's amazing. I know she's not in our store much, or any of our stores much, but the reality, you look at self-serve, there's a lot of people that do their self-serve laundry, and that's what they do. They don't care if it's folded.
Yeah.
They just, it's not important to them.
Just
obviously it is to us. They just want it clean. So a lot of people, a lot of owners in the industry call it a poor man's drop-off because you save, most of your labor is obviously folding and packaging and things like that. Yeah. And so if you're, we're $209 for drop-off laundry, you could charge $1 and make a killing because there's almost no, there's a minute or two to load a washer and they can go do other things. And then a minute or two to move it to a dryer and they can go do other things. And a minute or two to cram it in a bag and staple a receipt to it or something and drop it on a shelf. There's almost no labor. And so I'm intrigued by it. I'm digging into it. I was curious if you've had any conversation.
A time saver that doesn't cost you much.
I haven't yet, but I will be now. I like that idea.
Yeah, there's some people. It's not a real common thing, but there are. I don't know, probably a few dozen that I can think of that have either tried it or done it. I don't know anybody that does it at large volumes, which that would be obviously even more amazing because you could turn around hundreds of pounds an hour with one attendant. But it's all predicated on just someone's expectations. If they want it nice, folded, packaged the way we, showed you in the workshop and things like that, well, they're not going to want Carla would want nothing to do with that service. But there is a pretty good segment of society, at least in our market and a lot of other markets, that they actually don't care about that. They're perfectly fine putting on jeans that are wrinkled. They just don't care.
Our kids would be fine with it.
They would. They don't even care if they're clean.
That's true.
But it'd be interesting to see. I think what I suspect you might find is that you have customers come in that have pre-sorted their laundry. I want this folded, but I don't care how this comes back to me. It could be, dad's work clothes and or the kids' sports uniforms maybe that they're not worried if that's folded. And so, everyone's got a budget that they need to, operate their family and their lives by. So It's an interesting concept. It's not sort of one that I've looked at, but I think I will after this.
Now you're going to have 3 tiers of drop off. You're going to have wash and go, regular or economy or whatever you want to call it, and then premier.
And then
ours is all just premier.
So
maybe we need to diversify.
So I know you're the data guy. So I'll tell you where the idea came from somebody else, not my idea. But the reason I was so intrigued by it is because, as you know, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had to really drill into our numbers and our labors and all the things we showed you in the workshop, right? Carla's helped a ton with those things, and I have obviously dug in from an operational perspective. So that has changed the way I look at business, because I'm not you. I'm not naturally a data guy. I told you that when you were here. But what
I tell him the data, and then he goes and figures out how to make it work.
That's exactly how
what
we work.
What he needs to do to get that number down.
Very well together. So and hopefully this helps everybody, but hopefully it helps you too a little. The reason it's so intriguing to me is because I've settled into this semi-scientific formula of how I price my self-serve, which is based on a pound of the pound capacity of the machine. So like my larger capacity machines, and I know they don't actually hold 80 pounds, so let's not go down that rabbit hole, but an 80-pound machine is priced at roughly 16 cents a pound for self-serve. Let's see, that was 80s, 60s are like 17 or maybe 18 rounded up. And then like our 40s are, I think 18 or 18 and a half maybe cents per pound. And then our 20s and our 30s are priced at 20 cents a pound. So obviously for a 20-pound washer, that means it's $4 for a 20-pound self-serve machine. And I looked at that and I said, man, if I can get 20 cents a pound for self-serve on a 20-pound machine, but I can get $1 a pound for wash and go, and there's almost no labor. I mean, it's like, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's almost zero. It's so insignificant. It just feels to me like, I mean, I know this is true.
It's probably like 15 minutes of labor.
Almost, yeah. I mean, if you charge instead of 20 cents a pound, $1 a pound, let's say you have an extra 5 cents of labor per pound, that's 75 cents per pound of profit. It's going to be the most it's going to be the most lucrative thing we do. And on a percentage basis, it's 75% profit, margin. And so that's what's really intriguing to me, is looking at it through that lens, which I didn't always look at our business that way, but I've started over the self-serve conversation 6 or 7 years maybe. So that's why I'm so intrigued by it, is I figure like, hey, if I don't get any customers, so be it, but it's still going to be there on the wall and on the TVs and stuff. And man, if I could actually market it and grow it, and I know a lot of people that they don't have great success converting a self-serve customer from self-serve to a premium drop-off, which is what the only 2 options we have right now other than delivery. But they do have a lot of success converting someone from self-serve to what they call poor man's drop-off. They go from 20 cents a pound to $1 a pound, but they won't go from 20 cents a pound to $2.09 a pound, for an example. And so it ends up being an in-store upsell too. So that's what's intriguing to me. I thought that might be a little bit intriguing to you and maybe our audience. So we're poking
Jason,
around.
Try it and do all the data analysis, and then let us know if we should do it too.
You know.
Well, the good news is, because I've had to drill down on so much data in the last few years, like I don't even have to put it in a spreadsheet. I'm just like, this just makes sense. It's not real complicated, right? So anyway,
it's amazing that point that you make. Like once you understand your numbers,
yes,
and you have them, as part of your day-to-day, how you operate your business. It one, it gives you confidence, and 2, you can make decisions a whole lot quicker.
Totally.
I think it's so. Hopefully, that's something that the audience, takes away from this episode is that I think there's a lot of value in understanding your numbers and the cost of how your business works, because it gives you confidence, it lets you make decisions easily. Like that example you just gave there, it's spot on. There's hardly any labor. Your costs are the same as if you're running a self-serve machine.
That's right. That's exactly right. And
really, it's not even like what we're bringing in from the self-serve machine, but the cost of running the self-serve machine. Like, so it's not even the 20 cents for a pound for that 20 pounder, because it's really just the utilities and the wear and tear on the machine.
True,
because you're doing it at cost.
Into your 20%.
Yeah.
Now you're literally looking at how we make decisions. I'm like, hey, what about this? Pick it apart. And she usually does. And I'm like, hey, I'm even smarter now. Good job. The key to success in life is to marry a smart woman.
Oh,
I agree with that.
Oh, man. Well, listen, I know we've kept you on here a long time. This was a fantastic episode. I don't know what we're going to call it, but it's going to be so helpful to so many people.
Lots of numbers.
I can't wait to see you and catch up a little. I know we're all going to be busy at the at the conference and stuff. But can't wait to see you for sure.
Couple of months, I think. Will be good to catch up.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6 weeks, something like that. All right. Well, listen, we're going to let you go for today. For our audience back home, man, we hope you got some value out of this. We're always trying to bring different guests with different perspectives. As we mentioned, Jason has become a pretty good friend of ours. And I know Jason specifically is very giving. He's very open and sharing. I know you feel like a lot of people kind of helped you with your journey, getting into the industry. And you should get to know Jason. He's good people, if nothing else.
Reach out. I'll be more than happy to help.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. We're going to let everyone go for today. Thanks for joining us at another episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks. Take care.
See you guys.